Hey, I'm E.B. Moss, Head of Content Strategy.
And I'm Ginger Conlon, Editor-in-Chief of MediaVillage, the knowledge exchange for thought leadership by the media, marketing, and advertising industry.
And the home of advancing diversity. One of the most important issues we're all facing is making sure that the media you see and hear reflects the face and cultures of the real world. And that's why we're here, to honor those moving the needle on diversity and inclusion, making sure more ages, races, persuasions are all represented and have a voice in the content we all consume. Let's reflect the world. Let's advance diversity. This podcast is a conversation with those who are being inducted into the Advancing Diversity Hall of Honors during CES 2020 on January 8th in Las Vegas. Visit ces20.com for more information on how you can support the effort and spotlight your company and what it's doing to move from advocacy to activism. Hey, it's E.B. Moss for an episode of the Advancing Diversity podcast, and this is an incredible opportunity to be sitting here with an incredible human being, Tony Rogers. He is the Senior Vice President and Chief Member Officer for Sam's Club. Hello, Tony.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for making the walk over. I know you were at meetings at 30 Rock, and I made you walk all the way over to 1 Rock here at Zoe.
It was a nice walk. It's a beautiful day.
We appreciate it. I want to share a little bit about what you've been doing. I'll start with the sort of high points of the bio. I'll do that for you. It's always awkward to talk about yourself, right? You are responsible for end-to-end member strategy now, membership, marketing, member experience for Sam's Club. And that's been for about the past year, as I understand it.
That's right.
And for, 13 years before that, you were Chief Marketing Officer of Walmart US, and you handled all of those marketing efforts, customer research, strategy. You also created the first omnichannel marketing function. And I love this line, you forged integrations with key pop culture moments and figures. Who was your favorite? What was your favorite?
You know, I think we were on the Summer Olympics a few years ago, and just being in the opening ceremony of the Summer Olympics was such a great moment for the brand. That was one of my favorites.
I don't blame you. I would have liked to have been you. Yeah. I also love this line. In your bio, it says, Tony helped translate Sam Walton's words into Walmart's purpose statement. We save people money so they can live better. And I really feel like that tees up so much of what we want to talk about with advancing diversity is the people factor. And I should also note that before this, you were a CPA and worked on the brand side of things. So to tee it off, tell me about what it was like moving from 20 years in marketing and packaged goods and tech and retail to now you're working with a membership database just to get the bio part underway.
So I'm really enjoying going to Sam's Club, and after spending 13 years in a traditional retail environment with Walmart, it's really fascinating to be in a membership model. My friends give me a hard time because it's the first time I've had a P&L since I've been 15 years since I was selling tortilla chips.
Well, that's good for you because you did start as a CPA.
Yeah, exactly.
So you know from P&L.
I hope so. But the way that consumers are interacting with companies today, it is becoming more membership and subscription driven. And that's really a fascinating way to run a business because you've got a person who's paid money to do business with you. And so a couple things happen. One is that it elevates your obligation to provide a great experience because this isn't just somebody that walked in off the street. They actually paid money to shop with you. You have to deliver for them. And then I think the other piece is because they're a member of your organization, you know a lot about them. You know what they buy, what they like, what they don't like. And there's an expectation that I think you'll use that information to take friction out of the process for them and save them time and money and point them to the right products. So that's a whole new frontier for me, and I'm really enjoying it.
Well, I was joking about being a CPA first, but I have another question along those lines, because MediaVillage is, of course, a publication about media marketing and advertising, and you coming from that accounting side and actually having a master's in business administration and working for KPMG first, how do you see the transition happening now for today's CMOs? Do they have to have more of that sort of P&L and MarTech mentality?
Very much so. Very much so. I always tell people, if you're working in marketing and retail right now, you are at the intersection of two things that are changing dramatically. I mean, look how different retail is compared to a decade ago, and look how different marketing is. And so it's really a fascinating dynamic where a guy like me, I came up, making TV commercials and print ads, and now I spend most of my time meeting with people like Google and Facebook. And so the key, I think, is one, be humble and be willing to be a lifelong learner, be willing to adapt and evolve. You still need to make TV commercials, but you got to get good at this other stuff too. And then I think the other part is surrounding yourself with people that are passionate about these new spaces and good at them, who are willing to take the time and educate you and bring you along. So you have a lot of reverse education happening in marketing these days.
So we talked about the fact that you're about a year in at Sam's Club doing that type of membership marketing now, and we'll talk about your rich side life and contributions to the industry overall. But Walmart also is known for a lot of its pro-social initiatives. So do you remember what first inspired you to help or participate in diversity initiatives at Walmart?
I think that one of the things you realize when you work at a giant company like Walmart, and really I think just about any big company, is you have this opportunity not only to do your job and to achieve your financial objectives, but you can leverage the platform that you've been given to make a positive change in the world around you. And I really think that in my lifetime, I've seen the role of corporate America become more and more pronounced in terms of its ability to create change, and I would even say the need for corporate America to create change. Mm-hmm. And so I think Walmart was so big, it's really ingrained into the culture that we play that role. And there's a story that we tell in our offices. Hurricane Katrina happened in 2005, and that was really a seminal moment for the company. There's a huge picture of this in our lobby. But when Hurricane Katrina happened in New Orleans, Walmart's pretty good at logistics, right?
Yes.
Walmart was there on the scene with relief supplies before FEMA. And there's this iconic picture of just this row of Walmart 18-wheelers on the highway, literally as far as you can see, of just bringing water and relief supplies. And I think that was when the whole company, under the leadership of a man named Lee Scott, who was our CEO at the time, I think that was the moment when the company realized, wow, we're bigger than just a regular company.
That is a great story. And one of the things that I'm fond of talking about is the triple bottom line of people, planet, and profits. And that really speaks to the fact that if you look out for the first two, then you'll benefit with the third one. And so back to the people story, I also want to share this about part of your bio. The meeting that you were here for at 30 Rock and came over here for is the board meeting of the ANA's Alliance for Inclusive and Multicultural Marketing, or AIM. And you've been a part of that organization and that particular committee for at least a couple of years now, and in fact you're co-chairman.
That's right.
Talk about what the initiatives are, because that's really emblematic of what our industry is trying to move towards and move from, as we say at MediaVillage, advocacy to activism.
Yeah, it's really a labor of love to be working on AIM and to be co-chairing it. And you asked a question a minute ago. I kind of went down a different path with the discussion about Hurricane Katrina, but I think your question was even more specific around diversity and getting involved in that effort. And for me, kind of dovetailing on the Hurricane Katrina deal, I had a personal kind of a moving experience when I first came to Walmart early in my Walmart career. We were changing out our African American ad agencies, and we were bringing in a new agency, and the existing agency was leaving, and I realized how big we were when each one of the two agencies who was vying for the job had a spokesperson. The agency that was leaving, their spokesperson was the Reverend Jesse Jackson, and the agency that we were hiring, their spokesperson was the Reverend Al Sharpton. So before I could even call the agencies like any marketer would do to talk to the winner and the one that didn't win, I had to call Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton. And so that was another moment where I just realized there's a lot more that can be done here besides just achieving our financial objectives. And so we've really been on a journey for the last 14 years to try and use our scale and the size of our company as a force for good. And diversity and inclusion is one of the main areas where we've been trying to do that.
Well, I love that because in a previous conversation you and I had, you mentioned that there were several fronts that you've helped institute when it comes to ensuring that Walmart / now Sam's Club is more diverse and inclusive. Yeah. And I think that working with a diverse group of partners is part of it. Can you reframe those three things that you told me about?
Absolutely. I think that there really are a few key areas that we've been pretty focused on, and they all are completely interconnected, as you might imagine. I think the first piece is it starts internally, and it starts with your team. What I have found over the years is that it's very difficult to authentically do diverse and inclusive marketing if your team is not diverse and inclusive. And so we've really tried hard over the years, whether it's efforts at HBCUs or through Black MBA or some of the other organizations. The consortium is a group that we've worked with that works really hard to put really high talent African American, Hispanic, and other diverse folks in front of companies. And so we've been very diligent about trying to build up the diversity inside our teams. One advantage we have now is that as the company has grown and diversified, we have offices all over the place. So now we have offices in New York, we have offices in San Francisco, and Dallas, Austin, and of course Bentonville. And so that has helped us to really build a more diverse team. So I think that's the first of the three. The second of the three is the media approach. And what I find, especially if the team is not diverse enough, the team and by with no ill intent, a team that's not very diverse will not make very diverse media choices because people just buy what they're familiar with. They choose media choices that they're familiar with. What
we were raised on, what our habit is. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And the example I always tell is we were doing a campaign several years ago around layaway. And remember when layaway used to be a big deal in retail? And so we were getting ready for the holidays, and we called it general market at the time. My general market team was building their layaway campaign. And they were completely focused on what I would call mainstream media. At the same time, we had a Hispanic team who instead of working on layaway, they were working on a program for our sponsorship of the Latin Grammys. And it was just another one of these moments where you realize we got to get this thing more coordinated, because Hispanic audience is very important for layaway to be a successful program, and yet I've got this great Hispanic platform, and I'm not using it to talk about my business priority. And so that's really when we started working very hard to say, we're not going to have a sequestered multicultural team who only works on these side projects. Yes. We're going to leverage these really fantastic multicultural platforms in order to drive our business. And so so the media approach really changed. And then I think the last piece is just the creative itself.
Let me go back to the media for one quick second.
Please.
That also includes allocating budgets to, let's say, Hispanic media, like a Univision and African American oriented media, whether it's a BET or what have you. Yes?
That's right.
Okay.
And that's easier said than done.
Yes.
Again, back to this point, if you don't naturally have the diversity in the team, you have to force some of these decisions. So in the early days, we actually had to lay out quotas and say, if you have a program like layaway, yes, you're gonna spend X% of your budget, targeting this target and that target. And we had to do that for a couple of years to get people in the habit of just thinking about the entire market. After we did it for a couple of years, we ended up taking it away because we didn't need it anymore. But for a while there, you really had to force the issue.
Yeah, that's a great example of taking it from advocacy, people should buy Univision, to activism.
Yeah.
And we could also say putting your money where your mouth is.
Absolutely. And you're right. That is the biggest test of this whole thing. And obviously we use things like Nielsen data and all kinds of syndicated data and analytics, plus our own data. And even if you don't buy into diversity and inclusion from a moral perspective or an emotional perspective, it's just math. So much of the growth in the economy comes from diverse groups that if you aren't marketing to them authentically, you will feel it in your results.
Yes, so that's the people and the profits.
That's right.
Leading to that. And so your third area, I think.
Yeah, the third area was just the creative itself. And the way we look at it, especially on a large iconic brand like Walmart, the average American is exposed to thousands and thousands of ad impressions every day, every week. And what we asked ourselves is, and a lot of people are having the same conversation, what if those ad impressions were not just trying to sell you something, but what if at the same time they were providing, and I'll steal a term from a woman on my team, what if those ad impressions were providing a positive portrayal of American life?
What if?
A role model, an example, so that all day, every day, America is seeing something other than the polarized news media that we are exposed to. And so I think that's back to the earlier point that we were discussing. Corporate America has such an opportunity to play that role in our society in the way they build their departments, the way they allocate their money, and the imagery that they put in front of you. If you piece it all together, it can be pretty powerful.
And given the impact that Sam's Club and a Walmart has, I think that's excellent leading. So that's fantastic. You worked in China. I'm going to ask that again. How does your experience working in China, where that was part of your early stage at Walmart for 7-8 years, I think?
I was there for 2 years.
Okay, I'm going to ask this again. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Let's just say 17. I had it written out better, but okay. So you've gotten a global perspective, which I think has made you into the sort of eye-opened person you are today. And part of that is you spent a couple of years in China when you were on the Walmart side. How do you think that impacted your efforts towards diversity and inclusion?
Really changed my worldview and really that of my entire family. My kids went to an international school there, and my daughter's best friend was from Pakistan, my son's best friend was from Germany, and they were the only Americans in each of their grades. And for me, being at our office there in Shenzhen, it was the first time in my life where I had really been in the minority. You know, to stand in an elevator and there's a dozen people in the elevator and one of these things doesn't look like the other, and it was me.
Yeah.
And that's really the first time that's ever happened to me, and it really, it caused me to be more introspective and to think about, what that must feel like back here. And then I had an interesting thing that I witnessed. I was at a restaurant in Shenzhen, and an African American man was walking by, and there were a couple of locals, Shenzhen locals, that were giving the guy a hard time. And as I was sitting on this kind of bistro table as they walked by, one of the Chinese men said to the African American, he said, "Hey, are you American?" And he said, "Yeah, I am." And then they basically like said some profanities to him. Mm-hmm. And I had this epiphany, like, holy cow. So here's a guy, he's African American, he's probably been subjected to, unpleasant things in his own country.
In the U.S., right?
But here he is in China, and he's so easily identifiable as American that now he's having to defend himself as just being American. Yeah.
Oh boy.
So just, I don't think you can replicate those, unless you travel a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so that, to your question, a couple of years over there really changed my worldview.
Well, I think that we're all the better for your experiences. So still, there are things to be concerned about, and there are things to be uplifted by. Mm-hmm. What are the two polar opposites that you see now?
Well, I mean, for me, obviously, the concern is just how polarized our society is. And I always tell people, if I took my friends and my circle of people that I interact with and spread them out on a political spectrum, I think they would cover the entire spectrum. And so I have a pretty diverse set of friends. Having said that, what I'm finding is that over time, everybody is regressing to one of the extremes. And even in my close circle of friends, I can feel sometimes that there are just now certain topics that we can't even bring up. Mm-hmm. And so I worry about that for our country and for our economy. I think that where I see hope is the meeting I just came from. There are 50 people in a room 2 blocks away at AIM, and they are passionately working to figure out how they can use their platforms in corporate America to try and be a force of good and a force of bringing people back together instead of pushing them apart. And so I really think that individuals in the workforce, and particularly people in corporate America, are increasingly going to have to step up and be courageous in that area.
So well said, and it also reminds me of the experience that those who attend Advancing Diversity at CES will see kind of physically implemented. It's an incredible event that Jack Myers and Rhonda Carnegie have created, and we employ something from the Sundance Institute called Creative Tensions that literally asks all of these high-profile media folks and marketing folks who are attending CES and our event to stand along a line that represents where they are in their point of view on any given topic, and then they're asked a question, or someone like you will share a point of view, and those who sort of resonate, with whom that resonates, will go and stand a little closer to you, and you find yourself moving along a continuum. So it's eye-opening, and it drives empathy. And I think that that is the whole key. Mm-hmm. So I love that you've experienced that.
You know, that's a great example. And to your point about empathy, one of the first opportunities I ever had to even be exposed to this diversity and inclusion space was about 20 years ago. I was working at PepsiCo, and I went to my first diversity class. And one of the exercises that they had us do is they said, write down the 10 people that you spend the most time with. And so everybody wrote down the 10 people. And then they started sharing. And what was clear in the room, and the reason they do the exercise, is all of the white people, the 10 people on their list were white.
Yep.
And the African Americans, they were all African American and Hispanic and so on. Mm-hmm. And the point they were making is, if you ever want to broaden your worldview, if you ever want to really be empathetic, to your point, you have to have these other people in your life, or else you'll never understand what they're going through.
So you hopeful?
I am. I'm very hopeful. Absolutely.
Good.
It's a challenging time for sure, but I think if you look at the history of our country, it's always been like this, and so I think we should have more hope than any generation has, but it's not going to be easy.
Well, at least there are those who are making the effort and activating things. Tony Rogers, Sam's Club, thank you very much.
Thanks, Evie.